The world is confusing when it comes to health and fitness, and it really shouldn't be. It's a real shame. My name is Brian Panuzzo. I am a former bond trader turned executive health and performance coach. I know exactly why your health keeps losing to your calendar, and I help you build a system that fixes it for good. I know your world as a financial professional because I lived it on the inside for 20 years. Welcome back to the show. This is the Success Lift podcast, and I'm your host, Brian, and I'm pumped to get into some of your questions this week. A couple of weeks ago, I put out to my email list. If you don't know, I write a daily email. You can go to thesuccesslift.com/join. It's in the show notes always. And you can get a short, but hopefully impactful daily message from me. And I put out to my readers, asking them, like, what do you want me to talk about? I need a podcast episode topic. And people always love the how-to. They always love the, what should I do? Is it this or that? Is it good or bad? And as my clients know, and anybody who ever asks me a question as it pertains to health, fitness, performance, nutrition, whatever, you better be prepared to sit down and listen if you ask me a question, even if it's in your mind a good or a bad or a yes or no answer, because most things are nuanced and contextual, context-driven. And so while I could say, something is good, something is bad, there are a lot of instances where it may be good for you and bad for someone else, or good for a particular season of your life or period of time and bad for another. And so I like episodes like this. I like topics like this because it allows me to expand a bit and give you that context and tell you why something, a particular diet, doesn't really make sense, although it actually should and could work and does work for people. So that's what we're going to break down. We're going to break down some common nutrition and fitness diets, programs, strategies that people use that I got asked a decent amount about. It was actually by far the number one. So I'm not gonna answer specific questions. I basically took the questions and I kind of categorized them into this theme of break down some common health, diet, nutrition, fitness types of concepts and give us your opinion, because I'm confused. The world is confusing when it comes to health and fitness, and it really shouldn't be. It's a real shame. I think the more people get confused, the more money there is to be made from the industry, by the industry, and the more confused you are, the more stuck you stay, and the more programs you try to buy, diets you go on, things that you do. And at the end of the day, guys and girls, this is a fairly simple game. You got to find something that works for you, that you can adhere to. I talked a couple of weeks ago about the sort of nutrition pyramid in our program. Adherence is at the bottom, at the foundation base of that program. And so many people jump to the top of the pyramid. What supplements should I use? When is a good time to eat? Should I fast? Should I not fast? What's the best workout to do? How do I do more cardio so that I can burn more fat? And all these are good things to think about. They're just not necessarily going to be, as we tell our clients, the thing that moves and pushes the big rocks. We want to be pushing the big rocks in our lives in all areas and not worry as much about the pebbles, the small rocks. And so I got a few questions. It sparked originally from a reader asking, again, a couple different types of questions and all same thematically, but ranked diets, ranked supplements, workouts, recovery, wearables. We may do more of that in a previous episode, but what I wanted to do is rank some common diets or nutrition strategies that you hear out there, and also some ideas of how people stay fit, what they do. And we're gonna move. We're gonna be super efficient here. And if anything interests you or you have further questions that are specific to you, you can always text me at 917-709-4283, or you can email me at brian@thesuccesslift.com. hedge.com. The first diet that has become more and more popular recently that I literally think sucks. All right. Again, caveat, it works. It works for people, but I think it sucks and I think it's highly unsustainable. And that would be sort of bucketing the carnivore and the keto diet in the same category. All right. Now, for those of you who don't know, keto is going to be very high fat, very, 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 very low carbohydrate, protein and fat based. Carnivore is like another level of that where you're literally just eating red meat, or now this sort of amended carnivore approach of just eating certain animal proteins, but removing everything else from your diet. And so the verdict for me is it sucks. All right. Both of them suck. Why? Why do they suck? Because the context is important. Because it pigeonholes you into a small number of foods. Sometimes it's not even the healthiest foods, in my opinion. Keto and carnivore kind of forced you into a higher fat, well, not by definition, you must eat higher fat because you need an energy source, but it's higher, let's say higher red meat consumption can also occasionally be related to higher elevated cholesterol levels. But honestly, my main objection around this particular strategy when it comes to nutrition is sustainability, as I mentioned. Where it works, because let's also give it its due, where carnivore does work is it really helps to be the ultimate elimination diet for a lot of people, because people have some unresolved gut health issues and they've tried everything over and over again. They've eaten healthy, they've gone paleo, they've done even a paleo autoimmune protocol, which is a very, very strict diet that I did for 30 days. It's like Whole30 on steroids for those of you who know Whole30. It's the ultimate elimination diet, and people tend to feel better when they eliminate things at first. But long term, it's proven now to really not be very effective for even people who aren't susceptible to those potential autoimmune or restrictions in their diet. All right. And so carnivore, keto, to me, highly unsustainable. Keto works because it removes carbohydrates. Okay. Now, here's the problem with that. You blame the carbohydrates when it's really the calories, because the carbohydrates that you cut out are usually the carbs that come with high degrees of fat content as well. And so your muffins, your pastries, your cookies, your desserts, your ice cream, even your pizza, all of these things have as many or more calories from fat than they do carbs. Nobody says, I cut out watermelon and sweet potato, and that was the unlock for me. Words not spoken by people who are very successful with their nutrition program in losing a bunch of body fat. It's, I cut out carbs. But yeah, you cut out carbs that included tons and tons of fat calories. And I know pasta is predominantly carbs, but you're also dousing it with oil most of the time, or having a very high calorie, high fat content, meatball or meat sauce with it. I actually do love a piece of sourdough with nothing on it with my eggs, but like, when do we ever eat bread and bagels, carbs that people blame, without putting a bunch of fat calories like butter, peanut butter, cream cheese, etc., dipping the bread in olive oil at the restaurant, without adding those two things together? So those are typically the problem. All right. And so people credit the diet when they're successful, but what the diet really did was restrict you from eating certain foods, which ultimately restricts calories. And ladies and gentlemen, that is what creates success in all diets, restricting calories. Okay? Moving on to our next very popular one. Speaking of restricting calories, intermittent fasting. The amount of times I get told by people who don't look good at all, who are about to hire me, that they intermittent fast and it works for them is absurd. Absurd. All right. Now, this is, again, very requested topic. Very, very requested topic. Does it work? Of course it works. I just said all diets work. All strategies work. Keto and carnivore work, so intermittent fasting has to work by definition. But I see it do more harm than good for clients. And here's what I mean by that. All right. The number one problem with the intermittent fasting approach for a lot of busy professionals in the middle of a work week is that they don't get enough protein in. All right, you have a shorter feeding window. Let's think noon to 8 p.m. Most people skip breakfast. When you intermittent fast, most people skip breakfast. By the way, I think if you're going to intermittent fast, which I don't do, you're better off skipping dinner. You're better off having a big meal in the morning, a big lunch, maybe some snacks, and shutting it down at 2 p.m. or something like that. All right, that's besides the point, and I think that's actually very hard from a social standpoint to actually implement into your life effectively. But I would say that would get phenomenal results if you really wanted to go do something crazy. Intermittent fast, but intermittent fast after like 2 p.m. All right. Now, why do people think it works? And why does it work for people? Well, because they cut out some of their eating window and they don't replace the calories. So I'm going to go back to the protein argument in a second. But now that I'm actually talking this through, I realize that the bigger one is people don't have a structured plan to break their fast. Now, let me lay out a real world scenario for you. All right. You do not eat in the morning because you are intermittent fasting. You got back-to-back meetings or you're like crazy AF on the desk all morning. All right. No big deal at 9 or 10 a.m. because you've just slammed a bunch of coffee, you're drinking water, you're in the mix, you're in the flow. Okay. As we're getting closer to lunch, a few things can and do happen. All right. The first one, probably the most common one, is that you get close to lunchtime and something happens. A fire starts at the office and you miss your typical window to grab lunch. Now, you may have another meeting that you have to jump into. You may just kind of keep going and going and going until it's like, oh my God, it's 1:30. I haven't eaten yet. Do you know how many times that I went through lunch and was like, shit, I haven't gotten lunch yet. It's more than I would like to admit. And I know that's a problem for a lot of you. Sometimes you get so busy, you forget to eat. When you remember finally to eat, you typically don't have a long lunch break. I'm talking to people that don't have lunch breaks. I get it. You don't go take an hour for lunch. Totally understand that. And so you need something fast, usually, in order to fill that gap. And because you've missed your window for lunch, you then need to figure out, well, what do I do? And so you usually run towards whatever's quick. There might be a leftover sandwich on the desk. There might be some food that one of the mutual fund wholesalers brought into the conference room, or it's sitting in the kitchen now. And so you go pick on that. Or since you don't have time for lunch, you start to graze on things. You grab the mixed nuts, you grab the popcorn or the pretzels, you grab a bar. And while none of these things in isolation are a problem, you end up accumulating calories throughout the day that aren't really productive. Very little in protein, very little in fiber. And you end up pretty damn hungry. And I don't need to tell you about that PM avalanche that hits, because it's going to hit. You can starve yourself throughout the workday because you're busy, because there's other things on your mind. But if you don't have a plan for when you're breaking your fast, all right, and you don't have insurance policies around you, I see intermittent fasting go wrong way more than I see it actually be beneficial. But what happens for people at first, especially, is they intermittent fast and therefore they take out a meal. And therefore, when you take out a meal, you reduce calories because you don't add them back from 12 to 8 and you get some results. So that first 10 pounds you lose because you're intermittent fast is easy money. But then it starts to creep back up. And you're like, well, I just need to intermittent fast harder next time, or I need to intermittent fast longer. But you can't and you don't. The other thing that tends to happen with intermittent fasting is you do get hungry around 10:45 or 11 or 11:15 or 11:30. And maybe lunch is not till noon or 12:30 or 1 for you. And those donuts show up at the office and the cupcakes show up for somebody's birthday. And extra food that came out of a meeting in a conference room gets brought out onto the main floor. And all of a sudden, all the seagulls flock. All the seagulls flock. If I had better editing, more professional production for this podcast, I'd have some seagull music come in right now. All right. All the seagulls flock to the food. And because all those seagulls and sheep or whatever you want to call them flock, so do you. You flock, oh, I'm hungry too. I just go grab one of those. And again, none of these decisions are terrible in isolation. It's the accumulation, the compounding effect of them over time. So what's my verdict on intermittent fasting, right? It's not an effective strategy for my clients. And in my opinion, people in the real world, in the trenches, just like you. Could I, somebody who works from home, who has a refrigerator close by, who is a meal planner and prepper, do very well with intermittent fasting? I'd like to think I could, because I'm in much more control over what's going on in my life right now. In my prior life, sitting in a seat like you do, in a bit more of a chaotic environment, I think intermittent fasting is a mistake. We have clients prioritize some breakfast, and it does them like exponentially better. They get better results. Now, if you're not somebody that eats a big breakfast, I do not try to jam food into your stomach. A strategy that we use is maybe sipping on a protein shake. This is just water, but I got my shaker cup here. If you can hear it, if you're not watching on YouTube, all right? Take a protein shake, a couple scoops of protein that you keep underneath your desk, throw two scoops of powder in there for 40 to 50 grams of protein with some water in it, or your favorite low-calorie beverage like an almond milk or something like that. Great way to spend only 200 to 300 calories, depending on the liquid that you put in, and get 40 to 50 grams of protein. And for some of you, that would be 50% of the total protein that you consume in a day. You could have a 50% bump in your protein consumption. It's going to help you feel fuller for longer. It's going to support the strength training that you do, help you build more lean muscle, change your body composition. So that's a strategy that we use. Brian, I don't want to mix a shaker on the desk. Cool. Get one of the pre-made ones, a Core Power, a Muscle Milk, Slate Milk. I don't care, but get something so that you're consuming some protein, maybe snacking on some fruit for some fiber. The combination of those two things are going to help you feel fuller for longer. All right. Let's go to the next category that I would say is like whole food diets. All right. Let's call it Whole30. Let's call it Paleo. Let's call it the Mediterranean diet. All those things are kind of in the same bucket as far as I'm concerned. All right. I would say general verdict, all three are generally very good. And I would highly suggest any of them. Okay. What makes them all work is the fact that they are predominantly single ingredient, whole foods from as close to nature as possible. All right. If I was forced to pick a diet, like can't deviate from a diet, have to do a diet, which I'm not a fan of, because I like to build in sustainability and adherence into my clients' programs. But if I had to, it would be one of these three. All right. It would be one of these three. Now, what are my problems with these? For most of these, there is, in my opinion, an unnecessary war on grains, carbohydrates, starches, stuff like that. All right. Let me let you in on a little secret. Lean in. I'm going to whisper it. All right. And I'm not going to whisper it. There ain't nothing wrong with rice, everybody. All right. There's nothing wrong with some good sourdough bread. Something wrong with some really good bread in any type of bread. There's nothing wrong with sugar. Oh my God, sugar in moderation. All right. The bigger point here is I don't like this like all or nothing, good or bad framing that like the paleo diet does or the Whole30 diet does, the removal of certain things. Now, Whole30 can be a strategy to reduce inflammation and kickstart the rest of your life. A January Whole30, I don't think is a bad idea at all. My wife does it all the time. All right. And so for me, like I like to think of this traffic light analogy that I share with people. All right. In nutrition, there are generally speaking a lot of green light foods. Okay. Think sort of your healthy fruits and vegetables, your lean protein sources, stuff like that. There are typically red light foods, very highly processed, sugar dominant, like super high cholesterol, kind of dominant foods for the most part. Everything is contextual. Okay. But the yellow light in nutrition, okay, a yellow light when you're speeding through, be safe on the road, everyone, is what? A couple seconds long at max, 2 seconds, 1,000, 2, 1,000. The yellow light in nutrition is 20 minutes long. What affects me might affect you completely differently. All right. Green beans might not sit well with you, and I love them to death, meaning like don't sit well in your stomach, not taste wise. Okay. And so I think like people take that approach. Some green light foods might not work for you. Somebody with SIBO is probably not going to eat a ton of vegetables. Okay. So like you got to know what works for you. You're your own experimental project here. And so ultimately, like, we need to solve for adherence, total calories, prioritize whole foods, prioritize protein and fiber, and then, in my opinion, leave room for 5, 2 if you're locked in, 15 if you're not. In my approach, it's like I'm usually like 90-10, 95-5 sometimes. Sometimes I'm really pushing it to 98-2. I mean, very rarely am I 100%. All right. Maybe for a very short period of time, very short. And very rarely do I really fall below 75-25, 80-20. On a vacation, a very short period of time, 100%. I could be 40-60 the other way. All right. And so that's my approach with those types of diets. Let's get to the ones that I just completely will throw away. Vegan, juice cleanses, detoxes, anything in that category. All right. Now let me big asterisk here because I don't want to lose any of my my conservationists or my I don't want to lose anybody from California here. All right. Vegan's fine if it's a personal or ethical choice. All right. It's just not a superior diet. So it's just not. It's just a fact. All right. The real risk for somebody who's vegan is underprotein, not consuming enough protein. All right. Most vegan eaters don't hit adequate protein targets without real intention or supplementation. All right. Juice cleanses and detoxes, just get the F out of here with this. Like, it's just not even a starter for here. All right. You want to add some green juice to your nutrition? Sure. I mean, I promote AG1 on this podcast. So, like, that's how I get my green juice every day. But it ain't a detox and it ain't a cleanse. All right. Lastly, let's go to supplements. Okay. So on the nutrition front, let's go to supplements. First of all, check out our supplement guide. We'll put a link in the show notes. It's one of the most simple pieces of information that you'll ever get. It's done intentionally because I think people wildly overcomplicate supplements. All right. And I think you should do less with more or more with less when it comes to supplements. What are some of my favorites? Creatine, whey protein. All right. A huge fan of both. If you're going to strength train, you should probably consume both of them. All right. Whey protein is maybe an asterisk because you might be able to get all of your protein needs from whole foods. I find that most of my clients and most people I talk to struggle to hit protein targets without consuming a protein supplement. So therefore, we recommend it, but it is not necessary. All right. And I also highly would suggest things like magnesium, a good high quality fish oil, and vitamin D, K2. All right. The two companies that I am a huge fan of is First Form and AG1. You hear those ads on this podcast if you are a regular listener. And those are where I get my supplements from. Okay. Lastly, electrolytes. All right. Probably not necessary for most people. Huge caveat and disclaimer. I can't really drink water without putting half a stick of Element, LMNT, into my water for the flavor. It's sodium, magnesium, potassium. If you're an everyday desk worker, you probably don't need it too much. All right. Let's quickly recap of supplements. All right. Creatine, protein, whey protein. All right. Two foundational, most highly studied supplements on the planet, in addition to caffeine. Very safe for most people. Obviously, some people who struggle with some gut issues, you might want to consider a non-whey based protein powder. We have clients that use some plant-based protein because they just digest it better. Whey isolate is going to be a little bit easier to digest for anybody with sensitivities to dairy, not allergies. You have a dairy allergy, I would go to a plant-based protein. Fish oil, we recommend fish oil because most people don't get enough omega-3 fatty acids in their diet. We recommend magnesium because most of our soil is sort of depleted of magnesium. And so the vegetables, the nutrients that we usually get from a lot of the foods that we eat are typically not there. And then vitamin D, K2, again, something else that people typically don't get enough of, especially in colder weather climates. And so all three of those are foundational for me and our clients. Multivitamin would be another one that you could consider. Full disclosure, I just use AG1. They are a sponsor of the podcast, as I've mentioned. As you hear, I use it kind of as my multivitamin. I mean, look, I sell AG1. I want you to buy it. I want you to use my link because I get a small commission from it. Do you need AG1? Yeah, it's not bad, but you don't need it. You don't need it. It's not like necessary. It's not a big rock. It's a small rock. All right. Supplements, small rock. Top of the pyramid in terms of foundation, small rock. Okay. So they do sponsor the podcast. I do want you to buy it. I do want you to use my affiliate link code in the show notes, but you don't really need it, especially if you're not doing foundations. All right. Lastly, BCAAs, pre-workouts, fat burners, testosterone boosters, pretty much throw them away. All right. Throw them in the garbage. You don't need BCAAs. You don't need a pre-workout. Drink some black coffee. Most pre-workouts, the only thing that's good in them is the caffeine anyway. Fat burner, calorie deficit. Got that solved for you. There you go. Don't waste your money on a fat burner. And testosterone boosters, my opinion, just go on TRT if you need it. Get blood work, all right? More on TRT and some other things. It just kind of deserves its own episode. And we're going to cover training next week. So if you enjoyed this, tune in because I want to break down training a little bit more. And I don't want this episode to get too long. If you enjoyed this episode, will you hit the like button? Will you hit the subscribe button? Will you leave a review? Will you leave a rating? Will you tell me, email me, brian@thesuccesslift.com. Let me know you enjoyed it. I appreciate you guys. I'll see you back here. We're going to be doing more how-to kind of like tactical stuff for you. We're going to do more rankings in the month of August. We're going to do a series that I call Healthy But. You'll hear more about that soon. It's healthy, but it's probably doing more harm than good. And we're going to do some fast options for you. All these are coming in the coming weeks. A lot of you guys have been asking for some of this tactical stuff on the podcast that allows me to be blunt, but also break it down, give you context, give you nuance. If you enjoyed the podcast, please let somebody know about it. We'll see you back here next week. I appreciate you.